I'm Michelle, and this is Miranda. Yes, we are sisters. We are just providing information about the question of if bisphenol A is safe or not safe. This was interesting to us because she's pregnant, and we've been having to do the baby shopping, and that's been the biggest rise in concern for consumers, is if it's safe for infants.
And BPA has been used in a lot of plastics, and like on the market, most of the baby bottles advertising for BPA-free. It's like a huge market to get BPA-free baby products. And these are like some other names of BPA, so there could be some confusion about what it is, but really it's just this simple little molecule that is, it has a lot of uses. Mainly it's used for making plastics, so any kind of polycarbonate plastics that you can think of probably have BPA in them. If you don't really think of yourself as getting a lot of exposure to BPA through most of the sources of plastics, like this stand right here and stuff in your car and your glasses, BPA is not really getting in your body from those sources.
Usually the source is just from what you ingest, and it's from what leaks into, as they call leakage, into like food products, because it's in the lining of cans and liners for food, bottles that we mentioned before. The concern for infants is that there are infants and they're more susceptible to the possible adverse effects of BPA. These are just suspected effects of exposure. There's really no proof that these things happen, but it's suspected to disrupt your endocrine system, and it's correlated with increased exposure to have increased rates of certain cancers, reproductive abnormalities. Most of the studies that have been done in animals, so it's not conclusive in humans. The neurological effects similar to ADHD and accelerated puberty in females. You always hear about studies that are saying that these things are happening and these trends are occurring in our population in the U.S., but not necessarily pinpointing a reason why. And then diabetes and obesity. And just an interesting side note is that for me is that like some of these things like the cancers and the puberty and little girls, the diabetes and obesity rates are on the rise in general, but they're associated more with bottle-fed babies than breastfed babies. Of course, there's benefits to BPA. We use them for containing our food and storing it. Also, I don't know if you've ever had coating on your teeth to help prevent decay or cavities. It's part of just food packaging every day to make your life convenient to take food to school instead of spending lots of money on fast food.
So as far as the BPA market, most of what BPA is used for is in the plastics. And out of that BPA that's used for making plastics, only about 3% of that market is in food products. So it's very little of the BPA market. BPA is not really necessarily being affected by this huge concern over whether it should be banned or whatever. The other like 20% of the BPA market is for these food liners. Like when you open a can, if you have a can, it might be all rusty on the outside, but you open it up and it's still smooth on the inside. That little gray clear coating is got the BPA in it. So as like your bottled water or a can of food, whether it's like a tin can or a plastic can that maybe like baby formula might come in, when those things go through temperature changes, or like when you microwave plastic containers or you stick them in the freezer, like all these Ziploc disposable containers, every time you do that, it's like stretching and condensing the plastics, and that lets the BPA leach into your food, whatever is in that container. So as far as the plastics market, they're not concerned over the BPA, but as far as the food market, there's not really a replacement for that. So right now, the consensus is we have to keep people from getting food poisoning, and a lot of the products are keeping the BPA in it, although like plastic water bottles, you can find some that are BPA free, but as far as food cans and stuff, there's no replacement for that right now. And also, as far as the increase in exposure to BPA, which has been, BPA levels are considered safe by the FDA and by the EPA is like not sure. FDA says that the products that are on the market that they regulate are safe exposure levels of BPA. But we use those convenience items a lot more than we used to. So exposure, really increases with the use of those products.
Like I was saying, like the infants in the bottles being recalled, I don't know if everybody knows that recently, has been more of a consumer demand, but it's because that's where the most adverse effect is supposed to be unknown as to the adverse effect, because they have determined 50 micrograms per kilogram to be the acceptable amount of leakage into the products. And with an infant, obviously, you have less body weight, so they're getting a higher exposure from the bottles. That's what they, using every day. So the BPA they're getting increased levels of BPA per kilogram than an adult possibly would. And their metabolism, as they're developing, is different than an adult. So that's where they assume that there's an adverse effect, but the studies haven't been conclusive.
Right. And also with the metabolism of the babies, their livers are not fully developed. And there have been animal studies that show that it causes mutations in the livers of rats that are fed high levels of BPA, and also that they have increased body weight overall and more unhealthy and sickly rats as a result. So it's not that for adults with your drinking water or water bottles and the stuff you get out of your food containers is a safe amount for adults. These are just some opinions that the National Toxicology Program has published, which does not necessarily regulate anything in our industries, but it is a source of information for the EPA and for the FDA. The FDA is maintaining that the levels are safe, that we're exposed to every day. They're not encouraging any changes in the market. But this NTP is saying there is some concern over effects that BPA can have on humans. So it's just interesting to me that it takes consumers to get all worked up about something for industry to change, when if there's any concern at all, I would think that our FDA would err on the side of caution for our behalf, and limit something that is thought to be controversial. One last thought is just an opinion on, the rates of all these things that are associated with BPA seem to be on the rise overall. There's a lot of things that are on the rise, so reporting is changed from how it was 100 years ago. And the rates of like obesity and childhood diabetes and those things, they're associated with a lot of other factors too, not just BPA. So you could say that those things are associated with the rise in global CO2, because it's just a trend that it's increasing over time. So you can't necessarily prove that BPA is the source of these problems. You can just show the relationship, that they are directly proportional. And this is for the creative part of our project, because we're not that creative. So anybody who wants to volunteer to stand up. This is for your entertainment.
Evolution of dance.
Nobody to dance? Aww.